Well, welcome to our community conversation session today for Solid Edge, Designcenter Solid Edge, I should say. We are talking about what is new in Solid Edge sheet metal and very excited to hear about this. So our speaker is Mohammed Sajjad. He's an application engineer for Siemens Software Global Technical Enablement Team. So his focus is understanding customer requirements and ensuring all of our solutions work seamlessly. He's been with Siemens for the past 9 years, first working with academic customers and now commercial customers. So very happy to have him share with us today. He's going to go through sheet metal workflow updates in Solid Edge, and while doing that, he's going to explain some efficiency tips to cut your rework and some manufacturable design best practices. So again, we're live. He's going to open the software, go through that live, and then afterwards we will have Q&A. So again, via hand raise and going through the questions in the chat. That is all from me for our introduction. So Mohammed, feel free to steal the screen.
All right, perfect. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the community conversation webinar on Designcenter Solid Edge sheet metal. My name is Mohammed Sajjad. I'm part of the Global Technical Enablement Team, part of Mainstream Engineering at Siemens. So today in this session, we'll be covering updates and enhancements from sheet metal from both 2025 and current year 2026. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we'll look at is bend deduction and bend allowance. So in 2025, we created support for bend deduction and bend allowance for bend length calculations. Now the options for those are located in the Gauge Properties tab that's located under the Materials table. We've also added new entries under the File Location tab in Solid Edge Options. And also we've added some new variables in the variable table. Also, new Excel tables have been added to the preferences folder. And those are the bend deduction table as well as the bend allowance. Now they're very similar to the previous gauge table spreadsheets that you're familiar with. But instead of getting gauge sheet values, you'll be getting the bend deduction or the bend allowance. Now, the bend calculation method can be set for each individual features, much like it was in the past with the neutral factor. And what this means is that you can control how each feature is calculated, whether it's through a neutral factor, a bend deduction, or bend allowance. And this is just to provide greater flexibility to the user. This is supported in both ordered as well as synchronous environment. Support for the bend table is available in both part environment as well as the draft environment. The bend calculation method column has been added to the bend table. And not only does it show which calculation method is used, but also its value. And additionally, in the draft environment, the calculation method column can be manually added to the bend table by the user. And along similar lines, another quick enhancement we have is the inquire elements. Which now supports bends using the bends only option. And what this does is it reports the bend calculation method and its value, as well as if it has been changed at the local level or at the global level. Other properties are also shown, including if you're using Excel table or other custom formula information as well. Inquire elements also supports mesh bodies, including results for vertices, edges, and faces. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in action in Solid Edge. So let me go ahead and open Solid Edge. So right here, we have a sheet metal part, and we can see this is a multi-body part because there's a main body and there's also a lofted transition. So multiple bodies right here. And if we want to see what the current calculation method is used, all you have to do is go into the materials table. Now you can double click on it, or you can right click and go to the materials table. Under the materials table, go to the gauge properties tab. And currently we can see that the bend calculation method that is used is neutral factor with a neutral factor of 0.33. So that's how you can see where the bend calculation method is located. Now in this model, we also have a flat pattern. So if I go to the flat pattern section, we can see the dimensions for the bends. And you'll notice once we make changes to this model, these values will change. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the design. And let's go ahead and change the global neutral factor. So let's go ahead and go into the materials table, the gauge properties. And what we want to do is we want to use the neutral factor, and we want to change the neutral factor. Instead of 0.33, let's go ahead and change this to 0.44. Once I've applied the change, let's go ahead and click on Apply to Model. And to make sure that the changes that we made is reflected in the model, let's go ahead and open up the bend table. So we can find the bend table if we go under the Tools tab. You can find the bend table. So in the bend table, what you can do is scroll all the way to the right, and you'll notice there's a column for calculation method, and it shows both the calculation method that is used, so neutral factor, and its value as well. And if you hover over individual, you can see which bend it is referring to. So let's go ahead and go to the main body. And let's go ahead and see the changes in the flat pattern. So if we go back to the flat pattern, because we changed the neutral factor from 0.33 to 0.44, notice the dimensions have changed. All right, let's go ahead and go to the main body. So we looked at changing the global calculation method. So what about if we wanted to change individual features? So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing that we want to do is let's go ahead and find multi-edge flange 1 in the Pathfinder. So if you go to the Pathfinder, you can see the multi-edge flange 1 is right there. So what I'm going to do is click on that. And then I'm going to go into Edit Definition. Next, let's go ahead and go into the options. And you'll notice right here in this middle, it's showing the bend calculation method as neutral factor and with a 0.44 because that's the global value. If we don't want to use that and we want to change individual features, all you have to do is turn off the use default value. And for this, what we will do is we will use, instead of neutral factor, we will use bend deduction. And the value we will use is 1.23 millimeters. Once we've entered that, let's go ahead and click OK. And then click Finish. And again, we want to make sure that the change that we made is reflected. So what we can use is the other enhancement that we had available, which was the inquire elements. So let's go ahead and go into the Inspect tab. And under 3D Measure, we can find Inquire Elements. Once we click on that, for the selection type, we want to find bends only. We want to select that. And let's go ahead and find the multi-edge flange 1. So if we hover over the bend, it will show the label. So we're currently looking at multi-edge flange 1. So I'm going to left click once. And we can see all the necessary information, which feature we're looking at, what the bend radius is, which calculation method is used, and because we changed it locally, we can see the value of that bend deduction. Right. So let's go ahead. So we looked at bend deduction. Let's look at another feature, flange 7. So in the Pathfinder, let's go ahead and find flange 7. So it's right here. So we'll click on flange 7 and we'll go into edit definition. And again, let's go ahead and go into the options for the flange. And again, because we want to change the feature individually, we don't want to use the default value, simply uncheck it. Now this time we want to use bend allowance. And the value we want to use is 3.33. Once we've entered that, let's go ahead and click OK. And then let's finish the command. So now what we want to do is, again, use the inquire elements command to make sure that the changes that we made are reflected. So again, let's go ahead and find flange 7. So if I hover over, I can see this is flange 7. I'm going to left click once. And we can see we're looking at flange 7. Calculation method used is bend allowance with the locally changed value of 3.33. All right. So let's get out of that. And let's go ahead and make sure those changes are reflected again in the bend table as well. So let's go ahead and go into the bend table and scroll all the way to the right. Notice all the values are the same, global values, except for the ones that we changed. So if we change these values, we can see that. And then also the ones that we changed for bend allowance. All right. So we looked at changing the global values, and we also looked at changing the values for individual feature. Next, let's go ahead and try to change from the Excel sheet, spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and go into the materials table or the gauge table. So double click on the materials. Go into the gauge properties. And this time, let's go ahead for the bend calculation method. We want to use bend deduction. And this time, what we want to do is use the Excel file to pull in the values for the global calculation. Notice it automatically directs to the file location. Now this spreadsheet, this file comes with pre-populated materials. So for this gauge table, we'll use the stainless steel. And for the sheet metal gauge, we'll use 20 gauge. And we want to make sure that the option for use bend deduction from Excel file is selected. And then let's go ahead and apply to the model. Give it a second. So again, we want to make sure that the changes that we made are reflected. So let's go ahead and open up the bend table. And if we scroll all the way to the right, we can see all the values have been pulled from the spreadsheet, except for the ones that we manually changed again. And just to make sure that that information is reflected, again, let's go ahead and use the inquire element. And for this, again, bends only, and we can select any of the bends. So let's just use flange 1, for example. So I'm going to left mouse click on it, and we can see which feature we're looking at, the bend radius, which calculation method is used, the bend deduction value, and because it's pulled from an Excel file, as well as the gauge table and the gauge itself. So all the necessary information you need for the bend. All right, so that was bend deduction, bend allowance, as well as inquire elements. Another similar quick little enhancement that we have for Solid Edge 2025 is the Edge command options are remembered. So the user's last setting in the Edge command will be remembered for the next command execution. And this applies to the selection filter and both the Edge options as well. So again, we can take a look at this in Solid Edge just to show you. So I'm going to open up sheet metal part 02. And in the Pathfinder, you see there's a sketch. Let's go ahead and turn on the sketch. And what I want to do is I want to create an etch. So under the Home tab, under the dimple command, you see there's a little drop down. Let's go ahead and click on the Etch command. For the selection type, I'll click on Sketch and then click on the actual sketch. Now, I'm not going to accept just yet. What I want to do is I want to show you the options that are currently set for Etch options. So right now the color is charcoal gray. And what I will do is make the width 4. And then let's click OK. And then you can either click on the green check mark or right click, and the edge will be created. Now we can turn off the sketch just to see the bend. And then if we go back into the Pathfinder, click on the edge. And if we go into edit definition, and if we go into the options, you'll notice that the options are remembered. So again, those options are remembered. It is just to make it easier for the users. So let's go ahead and change this to 1. Okay, and then finish. So that was the Etch command options. Another enhancement that we have for Solid Edge 2025 is that the Etch is save as flat impact. So the export Etch text as a text box will be honored as long as the Etch and all of its text is on planar faces only. So if the Etch is completely on a planar face, it will be exported as a text, as you can see in the image below. However, if even a little bit partial or fully on non-planar faces, so as you can see, it's across a bend, that will be translated as lines and curves. And I can show you how we can save it as a flat. So let's go ahead and go into Solid Edge. Let's go ahead and open up sheet metal part 3. And On the top ribbon, where the Save As command is, right next to the Save As, there's a drop down. We want to click on Save As Flat. Now it's asking you to select the face to be oriented upward in the flat. So for that, we'll select the top face and then select the edge to define the x-axis. So we'll select the edge closest to us. And it will automatically pop up the dialog box for saving. Now, when you're saving, if you go into the options, you want to make sure that the export etch text as a text box is selected. So click OK, and then you can click on Save. And that's it. So that was Etch Save As Flat. Another enhancement that we have for Solid Edge 2025 is that we've made improvement to the wrap sketch. And we focused on improving the accuracy as well as the reliability of the results for the users. And we want to make sure we're able to create precise edges across the bends. And this just improves the resulting curves that are connected across the different face edges, as well as it guarantees that the curves lay on parent surfaces, which, if you wanted to use those as input for normal features. Additionally, we've also made improvements to the wrapping around closed loop faces as well. And we can see this in action in Solid Edge. So I'm going to switch over to Solid Edge, and we'll go to part 04. So in the Pathfinder, see there's a sketch. I'm going to turn on the sketch. Now let's go ahead and go into the Surfacing tab. In the Surfacing tab, under Curves, you see a Project command. Right next to the Project command, there's a drop-down. Click on that, and we want to select Wrap Sketch. So you can see a little animation that shows you how the command works. So we want to click on Wrap Sketch. For the surfacing, we'll select Chain for the selection. And then we will click on the outer surface of the model. And then you can right-click or accept. For the sketch, we'll select the entire sketch. And then we can click on the sketch itself. And then we can click on Finish. So you can see the edge, the sketch is wrapped across. So that was wrap sketch improvements. Another enhancement that we have for Solid Edge 2025 is that because we noticed how intuitive it was to use a pattern command in synchronous mode, we translated that in ordered as well. So we brought that into ordered mode. So this enhancement plus the improvement in the vertical command bar just makes it a lot easier to create patterns. Additionally, we've also added the quick pattern option to make it easier for users to adapt to the new UI. And this enhancement doesn't require any profile or sketch from the user, since the profile will be automatically created. Now, it's understandable that some users are comfortable using the legacy workflow, and they want to be able to create their own sketch. So that is still available with the sketch option. During the edits, full ordered functionalities are still available for the users. Also, the last use option is remembered by Solid Edge. So it just makes it a lot more convenient for the users. Now, one thing that I do want to say is that this enhancement is not specifically for sheet metal, but it can be applied to sheet metal. So this was for 2025. So if we go into 2026, so we introduced the fill pattern feature to the ordered mode in our software. And this enhancement allows the user to pattern elements within a specified region so they can utilize the various fill styles such as rectangular, stagger, and radial. Now, the inputs for this feature parallel those used previously in the pattern commands. And it just enables easy selection of faces, edges, chains, features, and bodies. And by using this fill pattern, we want to improve the current capabilities of the pattern lineup in ordered modeling, just to provide more versatile design options. And again, very similar to the last slide, this is for general, it's not specifically for sheet metal, but again, it can be applied in sheet metal. And we'll see this in a second in a demo in Solid Edge. So let's go ahead and switch to Solid Edge, and I'll open up part 5A. So this is part 5A. And what I want to do is rotate to the front view. And what I want to do is I want to take this feature on this model. I want to fence select around it. And I want to create a pattern. So click on the pattern command. So I can do it from here as well as from here as well. So either way works. Now for this, what we want to do is instead of rectangular pattern, I want to create a circular pattern. And again, let's go ahead and click. First, let's lock onto the top face by clicking F3. What I want to do is I want to place this in a center. So if I hover over the edge, it'll automatically jump to the center. And then all I have to do is left click once. And then for the count, let's go ahead and enter 10. Now to see a preview, click on the preview command. And if we're satisfied with that, then we can go ahead and click on finish. So very simple, very intuitive. Let's go ahead and look at a sheet metal part. So here we have a sheet metal part that's some sort of a cover for a component. And what we want to do is we want to allow some sort of ventilation using a louver. So what we want to do is pattern louvers across this entire face. So let's go ahead and click on the louver in the Pathfinder, and then go ahead and go into the pattern command. Again, we want to lock onto this face. And instead of using circular, I want to use a rectangular. And I'll just make a rough rectangle of where I want to place it. After I've clicked on it once, then I can go ahead and change the values. So the X count for that will be 3. And once I've entered that, I can just press tab to go to the next dimension. So for the Y, we'll enter 5. For the length, I will enter 175 millimeters and then press tab. And for the width, I will enter 50 millimeters. So once I'm satisfied, I can click on preview, just to see how it looks. Then once I'm satisfied, I can just click finish. So very simple, very intuitive. So that was for 2026. Another enhancement is that we have etch support on bends and curved faces. And as you can see from the images on the right, 2024 had very limited support for etch on bends. But with 2025, we provided support for etch on bends, but only in order. And you'll see what changes were made in 2026 in the next slide. 2025, there was also support for cylindrical and conical bend faces. And the etch was automatically placed on all the faces that were touched by the wrapped input geometry. And then those were adjusted automatically as well if we were trying to create a flat pattern. So that was for 2025. So in 2026, we extended that etch support for sheet metal. We extended that to synchronous. Previously, it was only in ordered for 2025, but we extended that to 2026 in both ordered and synchronous, as well as for part models in both ordered and synchronous. So additionally, we extended the support for 3D curves as an input, but only in ordered. We also added the Etch command to the part environment. So if you wanted to, you can click on the Etch command and create that. And also we added the ability for the user to edit the etch after they have placed it. And if you're modeling in synchronous, once you make change to the model, you would be able to see the change in the etch. Those would be updated automatically. And we can see this in action in Solid Edge. So let's go ahead and go into Solid Edge, sheet metal part 6. So this is a sheet metal part. And in the Pathfinder, again, you can see a sketch. So let's go ahead and turn on the sketch. So it's a part number for this sheet metal part. And what we want to do is we want to create an etch. So go to the Home tab under the dimple command dropdown. Let's go ahead and click on the Etch command. So once we have that, for the selection, let's select a sketch. And then we want to click on the sketch. And then you can right mouse click or accept. And now we have the etch on the model. Now notice right now it's on a flat surface. So what we want to do is we want to get this etch onto the bend right here. So what we can do, let's go ahead and make some changes to the model itself. So I'm going to click on this front face of the model. And using the steering wheel, let's go ahead and push this back. And we want to move this 3.5 millimeters inwards. So notice now the etch is now on the bend. Another change that we can make is if we click on the bend, you can see the bend radius, and then click on the bend radius and change the bend radius to 2 millimeters. Let's see how the etch is updated. So notice how the etch automatically updates to reflect the changes that were made to the model. So far, we've only made changes to the model itself. Well, what if we want to make changes to the edge? What if we want to move that? So notice that the edge is kind of on one side. What I want to do is move this edge to the middle of this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the edge. And then let's go ahead and turn on the base coordinate system. And then what I will do is using the steering wheel, move this edge and align it with the center coordinate system. And let's go ahead and turn off the base coordinate system. And just like that, we're easily able to move the edge. So we can make modify the model, and the edge is automatically updated in synchronous. And we can also modify the edge itself. So those were the improvements on the edge feature. Another new enhancement that we have is the tab and slot feature, which allows for simultaneous placement of interlocking tabs and slot using a single command. And this approach just makes the tabs the primary design element, which drive the placement and dimension of the slots. So the tabs are what are driving the slots. One of the key advantages of this feature is the ability to edit the tabs and the slots together, and this just to ensure consistency and efficiency. Users can also utilize a single direction pattern for defining the placement, as well as a few other input options for customization. Now, currently, this feature is applicable to single parts, multi-body parts, or assembly parts, however, only in ordered for now. So let's go ahead and see this in action in Solid Edge. Let's switch to Solid Edge and open up sheet metal part 07. And we can see that this is a sheet metal part with multiple bodies. If we click on the drop down, so we can see we have two design bodies, one purple and one green. So we're going to be placing multiple tabs and slots. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's go ahead and start the tab and slot command, which is again located under the dimple dropdown. So under the dimple command, there's a dropdown. Let's go ahead and go to the tab and slot. First thing that we want to do is we want to define the tabs. So first we're going to look at parallel faces. So parallel faces right here. So click on that. So next we need to define the slots. So one side, if I zoom in, you can see there's a little bit of gap between the two faces. So I selected one side for the tab and the other side will be for the slot. Let's go ahead and enter some parameters. So for the parameters, number of tabs will be 10. The tab length will be 5 millimeters. And the start and end offset will be 1 millimeters each. Now notice that the tab spacing was grayed out, and that's because the pattern type is selected as fit. If we wanted to be able to customize this, we can click on the fill, so we'd be able to enter the spacing, but not the number of tabs. So we'll stick to the fit because we want to be able to enter the number of tabs. You can also change the slot length gap. If you wanted to customize the length, width, and the depth as well, you can click on multiple values option. But for simplicity's sake, let's go ahead and stay with the single value. For the single value, the length gap, let's enter 0.5 millimeters. Once I have that, I can either right click or click on preview. And we are on the extent step. So we need to define how long the extent for the tabs are. So for the distance, let's go ahead and enter 5 millimeters. And then we can right mouse click, and then we can click finish. So if we zoom in, you can see with just a single command, we were able to place the tabs and the slots. So that was parallel faces. Now let's go ahead and look at perpendicular faces. So what I want to do is I want to place tabs along the intersection of the green and the purple body. All right, so I'm going to click on the edge. It doesn't matter if you click on the inner edge or the outer edge because the tab is along the entire width. And then for the slot face, I'm going to select the purple body. Let's go ahead and enter the parameters. For the parameters, we'll keep the number of tabs as 10, tab length as 5, and stick with the same start offset and end offset of 1 millimeters. The only thing we'll change is the slot length gap, which will be 0.25. Once we have that, I can right mouse click or just click on preview. Now for the extent type, I want to select the top face of the purple body because I want the tabs to come out all the way to the top. So I'll left click once and then click on finish. So you'll notice if I zoom in, the tabs are coming out from the bottom all the way to the top of the purple body. And again, I want to do the same thing to these two edges as well. So I'm going to click on this once for the tab. For the slot face, we'll select the purple body again. And for the parameters, let's go ahead and change the number of tabs to 4. The tab length will be 4 millimeters. We'll keep the start and end offset same, as well as the slot length gap. Once I have that, I can right mouse click. For the extent, again, I want to bring this all the way to the top of the purple body. So the top face of the flat purple body. And we'll click on that and click finish. And again, I want to repeat this on the other side. So again, I'm going to place the tab along this edge. And then for the slot face, use the purple body. Now notice that all of the parameters are remembered. So again, this is just for our users' convenience, that all the inputs that you, the parameters that you enter from the last time are remembered. So again, we'll keep all the values the same. And then we'll go to the extent. And for the extent, we'll select the top face again. And then click on finish. So that was perpendicular faces. We just have one more tab and slot that we want to place, and that is along this edge. So what we want to do is notice there's a small gap, and what we want to do is place tabs going all the way to the bottom of this edge. So for the tab edge, we'll select this edge. For the slot, we'll select the bottom flat body. For the parameters, we'll enter 8. And for the tab length, we'll enter 10. Start and end offset, we'll enter 2 millimeters for both the start and the end. And the slot length gap, we will keep as 0.25. Now for this, the extent, make sure that you're selecting the bottom face of the this purple body, not the top, because right now it's only going to the top face. What we want to do is select the bottom face. And we can click on finish. So we want to make sure that we got it right. So we can see it's going all the way to the top, from the top all the way to the bottom edge. So that was tab and slot. So we looked at parallel faces, perpendicular faces, and faces at an angle. So that was new in Solid Edge 2025. Another enhancement is that we've made improvements to the multi-edge flange functionality, specifically enhancing the trimming and mitering capabilities for a lot of the unsupported cases. And we've gotten a lot of requests to have made those changes. So we want to be able to reflect our commitment to our users, to our community, and how important your feedback is. So this change is directly from the users. And as part of this upgrade, it's very important to note that if you made any existing features that you have, those will need to be recreated if you want to take advantage of this new capabilities. And this change just allows for greater design flexibility and precision. And it just makes it easier to work with complex shapes and edges. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in action in Solid Edge. So let's go ahead and open up sheet metal part 08. So this is just a simple sheet metal part. And what we want to do is we want to create a flange, multi-edge flange. So let's go ahead and go into multi-edge flange. And for the edges, let's go ahead and select the inner edges on this model. So there are going to be 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So once those are selected, you can right mouse click or click on the green check mark. And for the distance, we want to enter 12 millimeters. Once you have that, you can place it, make sure it's pointing inwards, not outwards. And then we can go ahead and click on finish. Now notice how the corners are not neat looking, they're overlapping each other. And we're going to make changes to that in a second. But first, let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Let's create some multi-edge flange. So again, we're selecting the inner 7 edges. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Once I have that, click on the check mark to accept. Now this time, what I want to do is I want to create the face. Well, first, let's go ahead and enter the distance of 12 millimeters. Now for the angle, what I want to do is I want to angle this multi-edge flange 45 degrees coming out. So if I enter 45 degrees, notice it's pointing inwards because of the dimension where it's measured from. So what we need to do is we need to add 45 degrees to 90. So 90 plus 45, that's 135 for it to be pointing out. So let's make this 135. Make sure it's pointing inwards and not outwards. And then left mouse click once. And then if it looks good, then we can go ahead and click on finish and come out of the command. So notice how they're overlapping. They're not neat looking, messy. And we'll see how easy it is to clean those up. So let's go ahead and go into the multi-edge flange 3 and go into edit definition. And then let's go ahead and navigate to the parameters tab. So click on the parameters tab and you'll notice there's a little toggle next to the trim option. And keep an eye on the corners. Notice how quickly those will be cleaned up. And just like that, with a single click of a button, we're able to make those changes. Very nice and clean. Let's go ahead and do the same thing to this side. Let's go into multi-edge flange 4. Click on edit definition. We'll navigate to the parameters tab. And again, it's just a simple toggle of the trim option. So just like that. Notice how nice and clean those corners look now. So that was the multi-edge flange trim. Another enhancement is that we added the addition of the mid-plane reference plane command. It's located in the reference plane pull down, where you can find other ways to create reference plane in the ribbon. And this is supported across all the environments. So the new command simplifies the process to be able to create midplanes. And the users can create it by selecting parallel planar faces or reference planes. So it's just as simple as that. And the addition of the mid-plane option just makes it easier to align and position different features, especially if you're working with complex designs. Another couple of quick enhancements is that the fence selection option will be remembered across the design sessions. And that's just to address a common request that we got from our users. Previously, each time you had a new Solid Edge design session, you would have to reset the selection. It would reset it to directional fence, and it would just create inconvenience for our users. So this just streamlines the process and allows the user to maintain their preference without having to reset it each time they start new. Additionally, we also introduced keyboard shortcuts for features like extrude and revolve, which make it switching between the extent through all, through next, from to, and finite just a lot more convenient. And users can utilize the keystrokes Z, X, Q, and W for quick access to these options. And finally, we've also added support for the slot command, which is now support in multi-bodies in both synchronous and ordered environment. And this enhancement allows the users to utilize the slot functionality more efficiently when they're dealing with complex design that have multiple bodies. And note that the body selection step will only be available when multiple bodies are present. And additionally, the workflow remains pretty much the same like it was for other commands that previously had multi-body operations such as hole, extrude, and revolve. And that's just to make it easier for users to adapt to this new functionality without having to learn too much new. So that was all of the enhancement for Solid Edge 2025 and 2026. So this concludes the webinar for the Designcenter Solid Edge sheet metal. If we have any questions, I know a few of my colleagues were answering questions in the chat. We can take those as well, and we can continue to answer those. And continue to submit those questions in the chat as well, because it'll be very useful for us. We can take all those questions, compile them into an FAQ to post for all the community members, especially the ones that were not able to make it today. Also, another thing that I want to mention is that we would really love your feedback on the enhancement that we have for Solid Edge sheet metal. What are some things that you like? What made your work a lot easier? You know, what you like, what you didn't like as well, you know, what could be improved upon. So we want to be able to get all of that in Solid Edge sheet metal. So we definitely would appreciate your feedback, especially on the community site as well. So we'd love your engagement on that.
Yeah, thank you for the session, Mohammed. It was really good detail. There are a few short questions in the chat. I'll give you a second to look at those while I share with the audience the link to the forums. So if you're not familiar, when Mohammed was mentioning the forums, where they are, you actually can click on the slide, which is here. Sorry, the link, which will take you directly to that place. So that's a live link, which will take you to the forums. And you can see in the image, we're recommending that you follow the topic so that when you do log in, the Solid Edge questions and conversations will be on your homepage whenever you log back in. And let me give a couple of announcements because we are at time for those who do need to drop. This one's coming straight from marketing. They would love everyone to post a review on G2 about Solid Edge. For those of you who love it, please explain, be honest. And, there's maybe you have some workarounds that you've built, but there is an opportunity there. And the other big announcement for everyone in PLM for Siemens is Realize Live. You may be familiar with our annual customer events in the summer. There's one in Americas, one in Europe, and then also in APAC, specifically India, each summer. So you can click on those registration links if you're interested, get more information. But yeah, a lot of the team, including myself, will be there. There's all sorts of demos and exciting things happening for all the customers. Once again, this is Mohammed's contact in the community, where you can reach him at his page there. There's the G2 survey if you didn't see it the first time and you want to go do that for the gift card. And that is a link to the forums where the recording will be available on Friday. So sounds like the team is going to go through the questions in the chat. So we will attempt to put some screenshots and things there. If your question didn't get answered, I suggest go to the recording and put your question under the recording if it doesn't get addressed some other way in the forums. So thanks again, Mohammed. Thanks everyone for coming as well. And we'll see you guys in the forums. Awesome. Thanks everyone.